Dr. Vince Gutierrez here, physical therapist. You can find me at movementthinker.org. Today we're going to talk about walking, using the treadmill versus not using the treadmill, what I typically prefer for my patients, and what would I recommend in the end. So I'm going to hop off here in a second. Slow it down first before you stop it. Some treadmills stop abruptly, okay, like this one. All right, so when we look at walking over the ground versus walking on a treadmill, there's not a lot of huge differences. The movements are fairly similar. You may bend your hip a little bit more on the treadmill. You may bend your knee a little bit more on the treadmill. But the walking is walking, calorie burned is calorie burned, right? The one thing that some research shows with walking on a treadmill is, especially if you're not holding on, you may develop a more cautious gait, meaning you may not feel as balanced as when you're walking over the ground, and it makes sense. You've got a belt moving underneath your feet, so you're just trying to keep track of the belt and not fall off, which is why you see a lot of people holding on to the treadmill, because it does change your balance a little bit. And that cautious gait will be more of a smaller step and decreased stance time. So you're not standing on one foot for as long as you would if you were walking over the ground. Now, what do I prefer? I prefer walking over the ground because it's how we move, right? It seems to me to be more functional than walking on a treadmill. But in the end, if you prefer treadmill walking, if time is a constraint, if your location is a constraint, if you live in Illinois and it's June or July and August, or February, January, and you don't really want to go outside and freeze, the treadmill makes sense, okay? But there are some things that you can do with over-the-ground walking that I've put in other videos that I would recommend doing, because walking in and of itself, although it's healthy, everything can be improved upon. And so I would first recommend walking, okay? And I typically recommend Tabata walking, okay? For those of you that don't know, Tabata was a Japanese researcher. Years ago, the first study came out. I can remember reading about this in the late 90s, maybe, early 2000s. And it has to do with high-intensity interval training. There's an article on the BBC site. If you just Google BBC Scotland and walking speed or interval training, you'll be able to pull up this quick article, and it shows as little as 6 seconds of going hard and fast can give you a significant change in your body's overall health. And I believe the research from the Tabata initially, this is going back, so it might not be completely accurate, but it's fairly close. Doing that 4 minutes of Tabata training gave you similar results. I believe it was in your cardiorespiratory fitness as 45 minutes on a stationary bike at a moderate pace. You don't have to do a lot, but you do have to push yourself, and you should be pushing yourself to the point to where you feel a little out of breath. It's kind of hard to start holding a conversation, but you should still be able to hold a conversation. Another way to look at how hard you're working is one of these fancy watches, right? I don't care which type of watch you get, but one that checks your heart rate. And you should push yourself to the point of a little discomfort, right? So if doing nothing was a 0 and being maximally exerted was a 10, ideally we'd like to see people around a 6 to 8, right? 60 to 80% of their maximal intensity. And we would do that with walking, and we would do that with other exercises also. So if you want to walk, I don't care if you walk on the treadmill, I don't care if you walk over ground. What I care is that you move. So one of the ways to modify walking is to carry something. I was covering this with a patient just the other day, and we were talking about loaded carries. And it doesn't matter what you carry. You can carry a sandbag. You can carry your kid, because I've got 2. And I'll tell you what, when my daughter has to go to swimming and I've got to carry the other 2 into and out of the building, it's like 50 pounds loaded onto my front. By the time I get inside of the little swimming class, my heart is going a mile a minute, because you can't breathe because they're compressing you down and they're trying to get away, and it's all heck breaks loose, right? But so you don't have to carry kids, but if you wanted to, it would make it harder. What you can do is just find a gallon of milk, carry a gallon of milk in one hand, carry a gallon of milk in the other hand. It doesn't really matter what you do, just as long as you're getting better week to week, month to month, year to year. Live better, move better, live well, move well. Thanks for watching.